Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back because today I'm going to continue my series of Star Wars movie reviews leading up to the release of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So next up is going to be none other than Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. It is directed by Irvin Kershner, and it brings back the majority of the main cast from Star Wars A New Hope, along with some new faces brought into the franchise. And with that said, let's get started. The film, set after the events of Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, follows the continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, and the rest of the gang as they get attacked by the Empire on the planet Hoth, and they escape and get separated while they were at it, while Han, Leia, C-3PO, and Chewbacca all try to evade the Empire on the Millennium Falcon. Luke travels to Dagobah alongside R2-D2 to search for Jedi Master Yoda, all while Darth Vader is trying to find Luke Skywalker and turn him to the dark side of the Force. This review will contain spoilers for the movie, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your only warning. I remembered watching this movie when I was really young to this day, and yes, this is one of the greatest sequels ever made. It is, without a doubt, my favorite Star Wars movie to date, and favorite Star Wars project of all time. I love The Empire Strikes Back so much. It does everything A New Hope does well at, but even better. And I love how it's a much more mature, darker story tale than Star Wars A New Hope is, where A New Hope is a fun, lighthearted, and easygoing adventure. Empire Strikes Back is a lot more mature. It has a lot more complex themes, and it's a lot more darker in tone than A New Hope, because we see our heroes branch off into their different stories, where Luke, after the attack on Hoth, he goes off to Dagobah with R2-D2 to find Yoda to continue his Jedi training, while Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO are trying to escape and get away from the Empire as they're being hunted. And then you got Darth Vader, who wants to turn Luke Skywalker over to the dark side. It is a much more darker movie, and I think that worked perfectly, and it created a lot of iconic sequel tropes, like the main characters being split up for a majority of this movie. I love how we open with Luke on Hoth. He just got captured by a Wampa, and how he escapes in a really cool sequence, and how Han is dealing with the fact that I owe Jabba the Hutt money. I'm in debt to him, so I have to leave the rebellion to do that. But then you see Leia starts to have feelings for Han. You start to see this movie give us that iconic relationship between Han Solo and Leia, and I think that was really great here. I love the dynamic between Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher here. While we do get to see a lot of Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford together in A New Hope, this time we got to see a lot more of Harrison Ford with Carrie Fisher in Empire Strikes Back. So we got to see their love for one another start to blossom in this movie while they are in this really horrible state of being hunted down by the Imperial forces. I think really great stuff. I really liked how they did all that. And I love how, because it's a much more darker tale, we see a lot of the iconic sequel tropes be created, where this movie invented the idea of our main characters being split up, and this invents like one of the ideas where like the heroes don't win in the end. It does a lot of those things, and I think they do it really well, and it made sense for the story, because A New Hope, by the end of A New Hope, they emerged victorious. They won in the end, and it was such a fun, lighthearted story. This movie, while it's definitely one of the better Star Wars movies and one of the better paced Star Wars movies, this isn't exactly one of the most lighthearted ones because of all the stuff that goes down here. I really like Luke's story arc here, how he continues to be built into this Jedi that he is trying to become, and he's a lot more mature than he was in A New Hope, where in A New Hope he wants to go off and be a pilot, and in this movie you see him start to continue helping the rebellion, and he's a lot more mature because of it. But it's also because now too, he just destroyed the Death Star, and now he's going on this path to being a Jedi Knight, and Darth Vader now has an interest in trying to find him. And so I really like how we see him make choices of, he goes to Dagobah and he encounters Yoda, and I like that dynamic between Mark Hamill and Frank Oz, and how they had some really funny moments. And I love seeing Yoda, who we get introduced to for the first time in the franchise in this movie.
Help you again? Yes. I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
Great warrior.
A nice character who I really enjoy. We got introduced to Yoda in this movie, and I love how he's just a Jedi Master who's been in hiding for so long, just like what Obi-Wan Kenobi was in Star Wars A New Hope. And I really just liked how Yoda is trying to do everything in his power to make sure that Luke becomes a Jedi, even if Luke doesn't always succeed in the way Yoda wants him to. And it leads to some really iconic moments, like Yoda on Luke's back, running, jumping throughout Dagobah, and also the scene where Yoda lifts the X-wing out of the river and out of the water. I think that is a really awesome sequence, and another iconic score by John Williams, and this is by far the best Star Wars score by John Williams ever. I love his Star Wars movie scores, but this one is his most iconic because we got the Yoda theme, the Han and Leia theme, and we got the Imperial March, which is Darth Vader's official theme, because he didn't have a theme in A New Hope, but we got to finally have his theme here, and it is awesome. The Battle of Hoth is a really cool sequence. That is the moment where the characters and their adventures really starts to begin, because we got tease of like, okay, Obi-Wan in Force Ghost form tells Luke to go to Dagobah to find Yoda, and Han and Leia and them start to go off right around the Battle of Hoth, because then Darth Vader starts to pursue them. That is the awesome sequence where the rebels go off and fight against the Empire, which leads to AT-ATs being created and awesome fight sequences and awesome just battles between all their machinery. I think that is really cool stuff. And that is where the movie really starts to kick in. That's when all of our character stories really start to begin. Because once that happens, they get separated, they go off on their respective stories, and it goes from there all the way till the credits start to roll. It's a really awesome sequence. I really like how it's shot. And again, this is the special edition that I watched of this movie, and I think this by far has the least edits of the original trilogy. And this movie still looks really great, especially no matter what the edits are. I love the story of Han, Leia, C-3PO, and Chewbacca. They're in the Millennium Falcon, and they're trying to escape from the Empire. They're being chased after, and they go into an asteroid field. What makes that scene work so well is tension. The visual effects still look great, but one of the things that makes that scene so great is there is tension behind it. You care about these characters and the state that they're in, and because they just evacuated Hoth alongside the entire Rebel Alliance, but they're all off trying to get away from them. And so I really like that. And what even adds to that tension is that the hyperdrive isn't working the way it should be. So there are times where it's malfunctioning, and Han is like, punch it, Chewie, and they punched it, and it wasn't working. They weren't going into hyperspace, and it leads to some like really like good moments where Han and them are really trying to fix this hyperdrive to make sure that they can get away from the Empire. And I love that. Because that wouldn't work at the time, they decided to go into an asteroid field where you see them try to dodge all of these craters that are just orbiting in space, and awesome, awesome stuff. It's a really well done sequence that I love a lot, and it really holds up to this day marvelously. I love that sequence, and I just love that little moment that they all had with the Empire as they tried to evade them. And as this chase story and sequence progresses, I love how we start to see the blossom and the bloom of the relationship between Han Solo and Leia Organa, because I like the little moments they had in A New Hope, but they didn't have as much scenes together. And so I really like that in this movie, we finally got to see their relationship begin. This is where they kind of start to fall for one another, where Leia is like, she loves Han, but they didn't want to admit it to one another just yet. And so I love how there are moments in this scene where it's like, you see they have their first kiss, and I love how they tell that story where Han and Leia start to develop this bond where they really care about one another, and especially try to protect each other as they try to escape from the Empire and hide. And I think there's some really cool stuff here, especially with Chewbacca and C-3PO alongside them in this movie. And so I really like how Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher have such a fantastic chemistry with one another that I was invested and I cared about the relationship between these two characters. But I also love how good the writing is here. So I was able to care for them and be invested in their relationship and not have to worry about dialogue that doesn't feel right or forced or anything that doesn't feel natural. It feels really well done here. It's well written, well acted by Harrison and Carrie, and I just love how they executed it. And I just love that whole segment of the movie that deals with Han and Leia's romance with one another. And I love how they continue to tell it all the way till we go to Cloud City, where we get introduced to Lando Calrissian, who a friend of Han Solo from the past. And I love how that continues with their relationship, how they still start to care for one another, all the way until the iconic sequence where they fully admit to their love of one another in this movie, where everything that's happened in Empire, it all comes to a huge monumental point with that scene where Leia confesses to him, "I love you." And instead of just responding with "I love you," I love that Harrison Ford stuck with just saying, "I know." It is just very, very excellent scene. One of the best in Star Wars history. I love how it culminates, that whole romance storyline between those two characters and how it leads into Return of the Jedi. And aside from that, you have Luke, who goes to Dagobah. I really like how Dagobah is a very swampy planet. It's not as bright. It doesn't look like it's a place that you would want to visit, but it is a good place for hiding. And it proves to be true with Yoda. And we meet Yoda, played by Frank Oz, and I loved what they did for Yoda, who was made to be like a puppet. I think that was really cool. And I love the dynamic between Luke and Yoda and how Luke is being a little too cocky. It's like he wants to do this. He's like, "I know, you got to tell him I'm ready for this, Ben." But you realize Luke isn't quite ready as a Jedi just yet. And I like how Yoda is trying to show him the ways of the Force, especially as he trains him throughout this movie, where Yoda's on Luke's back and they jump throughout the swamps of Dagobah. And so as him trying to teach Luke to raise the X-Wing out of the ground, and even just discussing just the ways of the Force and how it's like, Luke, you got to conquer your fear. You cannot leave your training just yet because you still have so much to learn, especially from somebody like him. And so I really like their dynamic here. And it leads to an awesome scene right here where Luke enters a dark cave on Dagobah and he goes deeper and he sees Darth Vader. And he reacted to it and he took down Vader and his head looks like it gets chopped off. And then you see the mask part just explode and you see Luke's face, which is great foreshadowing to something that comes up later in this movie. And I really love that whole sequence from just the tension and the score by John Williams and just the believability of all the stuff that's happening. I think it's just really well done and it's a great Force vision moment that Luke had in this movie as Yoda tries to continue teaching Luke the ways of the Force. And how this is where Luke, as a Jedi, his training really starts to begin. Because by the time you get to Return of the Jedi, he's already a big Jedi of sort by the time that movie starts. Here you start to see him learn the ways of the Force from Master Yoda and how Luke needs to trying to learn what he can if he were to ever confront Vader once again. And so I really like that here. There's some really great moments. And again, John Williams' theme for Yoda is excellent. I love that scene where Yoda raises Luke's X-Wing out of the ground, telling Luke, size matters not. It does not matter. Like, how the height, any of that, no. It's just use the Force. Concentrate. And I love that, where you see how Luke failed to get that X-Wing out of the water. And I think it was so cool that Yoda just does it. It's just a really great sequence. Absolutely love it. And another thing I love about Luke and Yoda's dynamic is how Yoda tries to teach Luke, you got to detach yourself from the people you care about. You got to remove any potential of the dark side corrupting you, just like it did to Vader. And it's also excellent tease for what is to come in the climax of this movie. And I love how we see Yoda try to do all that he can to make sure that Luke concentrates on his training so that he can be stronger in the Force and more skilled in the ways of the Jedi. And I feel like really well done here. I just love the writing. I love just how it was done. And I love, again, I'm happy they did Yoda as just a puppet rather than as a visual effects character. I think that worked really well here. And especially the atmosphere of Dagobah, which I really love. I love a lot of these new planets we visit. We got to see Hoth, we got to see Dagobah, we got to see the Cloud City of Bespin. Really, really cool stuff here. I think there is some really great new locations in this movie, especially considering where we visit in Star Wars A New Hope. I think it's awesome that with this movie, we go to completely different locations, and Luke struggles to control his anger and control the temper that he has because he cares about Han and Leia, and he knows, he sees Han and Leia are in danger. They're going to get captured. Something bad is going to happen to them. And Yoda is trying to get Luke to hold back. You got to stop. You got to focus. Detach yourself from them, because if you want to continue your training and be a Jedi, you have to do this. And Luke, he's unable to do this. And so that's why it's really good that in this movie you see him. He still cares about his friends. Yet, to be a Jedi, these are conflicts he is facing along the way. And I really dug it. I think Mark Hamill is just excellent here. One of his best performances as Luke Skywalker. I really like what he does here, especially we see that character growth from A New Hope to here. And especially with that time jump they've had in between, I think Mark Hamill is just excellent as this character. Nobody could have done the role better, and I think that is awesome. Again, the whole cast is great. I loved Harrison Ford as Han Solo here, Carrie Fisher as Leia, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, James Earl Jones, Peter Mayhew, and even Billy Dee Williams. The whole cast is great all around in this movie. The third act here is absolutely phenomenal. I love how Luke decides to leave Dagobah and Yoda behind and quit his training for now so that he can go save his friends on the Cloud City of Bespin, where Darth Vader and the Empire, alongside Boba Fett, who we get introduced to in the feature films with this movie, we see them, they have captured Han and Leia in them, and Luke goes to see them so that he can save them from the Empire because of how much danger they are in. And it adds up the tension because this is a trap for Luke Skywalker, and that Jabba the Hutt wants Han. And I love how, because they didn't get Harrison Ford we don't know if Harrison Ford was going to do another movie at that time, they decided, instead of killing him off or anything, they decided to freeze him in carbonite. And I think that is an excellent way to wrap up his character in this movie, where after all things that happen, he's on the run, relationship with Leia starts to bloom, and he goes back to Cloud City at Bespin, where he reunites with Lando Calrissian, who's a great character, only to find out Vader and the Empire are there. They got them captured, and Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite, and he gets taken by Boba Fett and sent off to Jabba the Hutt. And I really like that here. And Leia and them, they find out how, this is a trap for Luke. And then Luke, not knowing of this, he goes there. He goes to Cloud City of Bespin against Yoda's wishes. And it leads to an awesome climactic duel against Luke and Darth Vader. One of the best fight sequences in the entire Skywalker saga. I love the tension here, and I love the atmosphere of everything that is around them. Sure, it's not the most choreographed fight sequence in Star Wars, but nevertheless, it is one of the best duels, because I love the tension here, where Luke goes there, and he goes to the carbonite chamber, and he sees Vader, who tells him that he is not a Jedi yet. And so they start to duel. He takes out his lightsaber, and so does Vader. And they fight one another. And just the way it was shot, the visuals and the performances from James Earl Jones and David Prowse as both the voice and body of Darth Vader, and Mark Hamill, I think is really excellent and spot on here. And I love that tension between the two of them, because this is the first time Luke and Vader have ever actually fought physically. So I think it's really cool that here, this is where they first battle one another for the first time. And I love how you see him try to freeze Luke in carbonite, and it failed. And Luke really sees how dangerous of an opponent Darth Vader really is. And the way it's paced too, it doesn't feel too long. It doesn't feel too short or abrupt. It's perfectly paced and perfectly timed. I was invested in this duel from the moment Luke enters that chamber and sees Darth Vader in the shadows. I think Well, not technically in the shadows, but all in all, I love that scene. I love how they fight and how Luke, he has to keep his head up. He has to be ready for anything that is going to happen because Darth Vader did try to freeze him in carbonite, and got to be very careful with this Darth Vader that he is fighting. And it is just a really, really epic moment and one of the best in this entire film. And so I love how they continue to duel on the Cloud City at Bespin from the carbonite chamber all the way to a certain location, and they duel and duel and duel until Darth Vader chops off his hand, which is a shocking moment. I remember when I was a young kid watching that scene, I was just surprised. I'm like, oh, they chopped off Luke's hand. I was like, the lightsaber's gone now. And for years, I always wondered what happened to that lightsaber. And then we got to see it again in Star Wars The Force Awakens, which I will get into in that review coming out. And we get to that iconic twist reveal where it is revealed to Luke that Darth Vader did not kill his father, but rather Darth Vader is his father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
It is one of the best twists in the history of cinema. It didn't feel out of left field because if you watch the movie very closely, and thankfully I've watched this movie several times since, you see a lot of teases that they were building up to a reveal like this, where throughout the movie, where it's like the cave fight on Dagobah, when Luke thought he killed Vader in that cave, you see Luke's head. It kind of symbolizes him like, it might be who he doesn't think it is just yet. And how Darth Vader was also a Jedi, but then the dark side corrupted him, just like how Yoda feared it might come out of Luke because he senses too much anger in Luke. They were teasing this moment throughout the movie, and it was perfectly executed here. It was shocking. It was just, I was in awe at this moment. And every single time I watch it, I still get shocked by that reveal. That it's like Darth Vader, the most dangerous man in the galaxy, is Luke's father. It is an amazing twist. I love it so much. And Mark Hamill's acting in that scene where he's like, that's impossible. And he just screams and cries out no in agony with knowing the truth that Darth Vader is in fact his father. And it really makes you look at all these movies differently, especially when you watch the prequel trilogy all the way till the sequel trilogy, with how the big villain of this movie and the original trilogy is his father, and how in that moment it really makes you see how just Luke had yet to realize this, and it really shakes things up for him in Return of the Jedi. And that was just an amazing twist. It will go down as one of the best twists in the history of cinema, and it is just phenomenally executed, and it's so well tackled too. And the idea, it really fits in line with what has happened in this movie as of this point. It is just an excellent moment. I love it so much. It is just one of my favorite scenes in movies. And so Darth Vader offers Luke to join him and that they would rule the galaxy together and overthrow the Emperor, who we get introduced to in this movie as the big overarching threat of the original trilogy, who also bleeds into the prequel trilogy, and so as the rise of Skywalker. And so we really got to see Emperor Palpatine for the first time, and we see how Vader is like to Luke, join me, and we will take over the galaxy side by side as father and son. And I love how Luke had a choice. He was either going to go with him or he escapes him, and he chooses, he falls from that high and he gets away from Vader, and he calls out to Leia and Lando and them for help. And he's devastated by this reveal that he is his father, and that he's shocked that Obi-Wan didn't even tell him this in Star Wars A New Hope, or even before this moment, because it came at such an awestruck moment where he doesn't even realize this until now. And it's like this whole time, Vader is his father. I can go on for days about that scene, but I just love that reveal. And I love how Luke decides to escape and not succumb to the dark side. And so he escapes from Vader, and Luke gets saved by Leia and Lando, Chewbacca and C-3PO and R2-D2, and they escape the Cloud City of Bespin, and they were successfully able to get away from the Empire. And it leads to an amazing ending that perfectly caps off everything we saw in this movie, where Luke gets a robotic hand to make up for the loss of his original hand. And Lando and Chewbacca take the Millennium Falcon, and they're going to go out to find Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. And Luke, Leia, C-3PO, and R2-D2, knowing all they've lost in this movie and the dark times they have most definitely encountered as this movie went on, they band together hoping that the best is yet to come and that they will rise again against the Empire. And I think it is a beautiful way to cap off this movie. It did not have as quite a happy ending like A New Hope does, but for a movie like this, in a story and tone and a mood like this, I think this is a perfect way to wrap up the movie, where Luke, Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2, and them, they reunite in the end, but Han is taken captive, and now he is with Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine, and he must be rescued, which sets up Return of the Jedi's first half of the movie. And I love how they just wrapped up all that, and it left me wondering, how will the original trilogy come to a close with Star Wars Return of the Jedi? And I have a review for that coming up soon. So really liked that. I love how the themes are of, like, you go from being young to adulthood. You see how when you start to grow up, you start to see the world in a different way, and just how darker it is, and just themes like friendship and love, and how far that can go and carry you through dark times like Empire Strikes Back, and especially has more complex themes than A New Hope does. But this is by far a phenomenally executed movie, fantastically directed by even Irvin Kershner, with the story being told and created by George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, and them. It is by far my all-time favorite Star Wars movie. I love it so much. It has fantastic acting, great visual effects, an amazing story, with an awesome climax, and a spectacular movie as a whole. So in the end, I'm going to give Empire Strikes Back an A+. And it is a must-watch movie for all. I love this movie so much. It is by far my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, and it's also my favorite Star Wars project of all time. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. Top 5. I love this movie so much. It's so rewatchable. And even as an 18-year-old, I still adore every second of this movie. It is one of the best sequels ever created, bar none, up there with The Dark Knight. And so I love this movie a lot. It's fantastically performed. It's well written, awesome action sequences, and so well paced while it was at it. I love this movie so much. It is this is how you create a sequel, and this is by far one of the best Star Wars projects of all time. And I don't even know if I ever see a Star Wars movie ever topping this one, to be honest with you. It's just fantastic for what it is, and I'm so happy it exists. So, yep. Those are my thoughts on Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Let me know down below in the comment section. What are your thoughts on this movie? Do you also love this movie as I do? Is it your favorite? I'd love to hear it down below in the comments. And stay tuned. I have a review for Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, coming up real soon. And thankfully, I've seen the movie. Well, I rewatched it already recently, so that should be coming up as soon as I can make it. So hope you guys will stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So don't forget to go do that while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more.
I don't believe it. That is why you fail.